By April 1814, after a decade of military dominance, Napoleon Bonaparte was finally defeated by a united European coalition and exiled to the island of Elba. France, exhausted by war, restored the Bourbon monarchy under Louis XVIII, a return that sparked little enthusiasm. Many still remembered the injustices that led to the revolution. Meanwhile, on Elba, Napoleon watched unrest grow in France and saw the Allied powers divided at the Congress of Vienna. Sensing his moment, he prepared to return. The eagle takes flight once more. After only 10 months in exile, in March 1815, Napoleon escaped Elba and returned to French soil. The troops sent to apprehend him greeted their former emperor with cheers rather than musket fire. A legend was reborn. The eagle, Napoleon declared, will fly from steeple to steeple until it reaches the towers of Notre Dame. Incredibly, he reclaimed power without firing a single shot. The so-called 100 Days had begun. But the European powers responded swiftly. Whatever differences they had in Vienna were immediately put aside in the face of this renewed threat. They declared Napoleon an outlaw and began massing troops for war. Their mission was simple: destroy Napoleon once and for all. Napoleon, knowing he couldn't face the full might of the coalition in a drawn-out campaign, aimed to strike fast and decisively. His plan: defeat the nearest coalition armies before they could unite. The most immediate threats were the Prussian army under Field Marshal Gebhard Leberecht von Blücher and the Anglo-Allied force led by Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington, both stationed in what is today Belgium. A daring strategy. On June 15, 1815, Napoleon's army crossed into Belgium near Charleroi. He hoped to wedge himself between the Prussians and Wellington's forces, defeating them one at a time before they could support each other. He dispatched his left wing, commanded by Marshal Ney, to seize a key crossroads at Quatre-Bras. There, Ney's forces encountered Wellington's army still organizing. Despite intense French attacks, the Allies held their position. Meanwhile, Napoleon led his main force against Blücher at the village of Ligny. The battle that ensued was a ferocious melee. Despite his age, 72, Blücher led a cavalry charge personally, only to be unhorsed and nearly captured. Still, Napoleon emerged victorious, forcing the Prussians to retreat. But crucially, they were not routed. Napoleon, believing the Prussians were retreating eastward, sent Marshal Grouchy and a detachment of 33,000 men to pursue them and prevent them from rejoining Wellington. Confident that Blücher was out of the picture, Napoleon turned his attention westward, Wellington's chosen ground. By June 17, Wellington had received word of the Prussian defeat. Realizing the danger of being caught alone, he withdrew his forces south of Brussels to a defensive position near the village of Waterloo. Despite heavy rain, Wellington prepared his lines on a gently sloping ridge, a tactical choice that offered his troops cover from French artillery fire. Key to his defense were three strong points: the farmhouses of Hougoumont on the right, La Haye-Sainte in the center, and Papelotte on the left. Each was garrisoned with elite Allied troops. Wellington's army was a mixed force: British regulars, Dutch conscripts, German allies, many of whom had little battle experience. But they would need to hold out long enough for the Prussians to arrive or risk annihilation. A delayed start and a deadly mistake. On the morning of Sunday, June 18, 1815, the skies cleared. Napoleon delayed his assault until late morning to allow the muddy ground to dry, giving his troops better mobility. In hindsight, those lost hours would prove costly. The battle began around 11 a.m. with a diversionary attack on Hougoumont, intended to draw Wellington's reserves away from the center. The farmhouse became the scene of some of the day's fiercest fighting. Despite several attempts, including one successful breach of the gates, the Allied troops held firm. The gate was slammed shut, trapping the French inside, who were then cut down. Wellington later called the defense of Hougoumont the turning point of the battle. At midday, Napoleon launched a massive artillery barrage, followed by an infantry assault aimed at breaking the Allied center. But the French columns were met with disciplined musket fire and then charged by British heavy cavalry. The French lines buckled, and their attack faltered. However, the British cavalry, carried away by their success, chased the retreating French too far and were themselves counterattacked by French lancers, suffering heavy losses, including the death of their commander, Sir William Ponsonby. Cavalry charges and Prussian arrival. By mid-afternoon, Marshal Ney misinterpreted movements in Wellington's lines as a general retreat. Without orders, he launched one of the most ill-fated cavalry charges in military history. Waves of French horsemen stormed the Allied lines but found them bristling with bayonets. The British infantry had formed squares tight, disciplined formations nearly impervious to cavalry. Without infantry or artillery support, Ney's repeated charges failed disastrously. As Ney hurled cavalry after cavalry into the fray, the Prussians were beginning to arrive. Blücher, having regrouped his army after Ligny, had evaded Grouchy and was now attacking the French right flank at the village of Plancenoit. Napoleon was forced to divert troops to counter this new threat, stretching his already thin reserves. The final blow. Around 6 p.m., the French managed to capture La Haye-Sainte, allowing them to move artillery closer to the Allied center. From there, they rained fire on the dense Allied squares. Casualties mounted, and Wellington's line appeared on the verge of collapse. In a desperate final effort, Napoleon unleashed his Imperial Guard, the elite of the elite, seasoned veterans feared across Europe. At 7:30 p.m., 3,000 guardsmen marched toward the Allied center. Wellington's men met them with a storm of musket fire. When British troops surged forward with bayonets, the Guard, incredibly, began to falter. They broke and ran. The retreat of the Imperial Guard, previously believed to be invincible, sent shockwaves through the French ranks. At the same time, the Prussians reclaimed Plancenoit, sealing off any chance of regrouping. Panic took hold. The French army dissolved into chaos, fleeing the field. Only Napoleon's old guard maintained discipline, mounting a heroic last stand to cover their emperor's escape. The aftermath of Waterloo. Napoleon barely escaped capture. He abandoned his carriage and fled, eventually surrendering to the British weeks later. This time, he would not be sent to a small island near home. Instead, the British exiled him to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic. He would spend the final 6 years of his life there, a prisoner of the very world he once ruled. The Battle of Waterloo claimed approximately 50,000 casualties, 23,000 from the coalition side and 27,000 French. Due to inadequate medical support, many wounded soldiers languished on the battlefield for days before receiving help. Legacy and reflection. Waterloo ended not only Napoleon's reign, but also a chapter of unrelenting war in Europe. The great powers entered a period of relative peace, known as the Concert of Europe, which lasted for 4 decades. The British would not fight another major continental war until World War I, a full century later. Decades later, the fading faces of the men who once fought for Napoleon were captured in early photographs, veterans now in their twilight years. Among them were Sergeant Tanya of the Imperial Guard, Moret of the 2nd Regiment of Hussars, and Verline of the 2nd Guard Lancers. Their images serve as haunting reminders of a bygone era, when empires rose and fell by the edge of a sword, and the will of one man changed the world. Waterloo was, in Wellington's own words, a damned near-run thing. But it was enough to bring down one of history's most brilliant and controversial figures. And in doing so, it reshaped the destiny of Europe for generations to come. And that's the dramatic story of the Battle of Waterloo. If you enjoyed this journey through one of history's most legendary battles, don't forget to smash that like and subscribe. Got a favorite historical moment you want us to cover next? Drop it in the comments below. We read every one. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay curious. See you in the next video.